WisconsinEye is in Oshkosh at the Democratic State Convention. We're interviewing Congresswoman Gwen Moore from Milwaukee. Congresswoman, thanks very much for sitting down with us.
Hey, thanks for having me, Steve.
Interesting times in Washington. Clearly the most interesting and historical times that since you've been there, right?
Absolutely. You know, interesting is an interesting word to use.
What's a better term?
It's chaotic, and I think the challenge for most of us is to try to stay focused inside of all of the insanity and madness that is going on. It is so easy, Steve, to be distracted by Stormy Daniels and important things like the Russian investigation. But what people really need to realize is that the president and this Republican majority are truly dismantling the administrative state. They are harming people with regard to health care, to the environment, with regard to having a decent wage and return on their productivity, that in every aspect of their lives as working class people, they are being harmed with the stuff that's going on behind the madness.
Well, Mr. Mueller has not completed his investigation, but you and many Americans are following it closely. Any thoughts on where it might lead?
Steve, I have gotten to a point that it's not really clear to me with all of the politics that's been inserted in it, that it will lead to any sort of accountability for President Trump. But what I am hoping will happen is that the public will realize that we need a check and balance on this Republican majority. I'm hoping that people will see that we have a Republican majority that is so eager to transfer wealth from even little children who are benefiting from the Children's Health Insurance Program. They're willing to take food out of the mouths of babies. They're willing to take Social Security benefits away from the disabled. I'm hoping that people will see, whether the president is impeached or whatever may or may not happen with regard to that we need a check on this Republican majority that is willing to let this president do anything in order to curry favor with him.
You mentioned impeachment. If your party seizes control, takes control of the House on November 6th, are you, as one member, ready to vote?
Steve, I'm very transparent about this. I think the man should have been impeached January 21st, 2017. But that being said, I do recognize that it's important for this to not appear to be partisan, for everybody to be on the same page, for us to, I'm frustrated that the House Intelligence Committee shut the investigation down before they had all of the details. I am certainly, as an American, willing to get the information, the memo from Bob Mueller, and follow the law as it's intended. I'm willing to set aside my personal feelings that this presidency has already failed for the benefit of the American people to come along.
One thing I don't understand is Republican Representative Trey Gowdy said this week the FBI followed all protocol and rules and regulations, didn't do anything improper. That's a member of the president's party. Help me understand that.
Well, I'm proud of Trey Gowdy because I was very disgusted earlier to realize that he had put so much effort into the nothing burger of Benghazi and then seemed to be stepping away from any sort of oversight responsibilities with regard to this. So it was a relief for me to see that Speaker Ryan had Trey Gowdy in the meeting that should have never occurred, and because it really, Devin Nunes is certainly an emissary of the president and is not independent at all.
Congresswoman, if your party takes control of the House, with your seniority, what position are you?
Well,
Would you likely to
Steve,
have?
I am willing to give up my seniority on the Financial Services Committee to be on the Ways and Means Committee. That's what I'm trying to be. I want to be on the Tax Writing Committee. Steve, I'm from Wisconsin. I'm I am from the state where the governor and the legislature not only ended the safety net for women and children, but spread this throughout the United States, and ultimately Bill Clinton and the Republicans signed a bill into law, the TANF bill, which has disallowed women in the education and training for 2 decades, which has completely threatened and jeopardized the well-being of children. And I want to be on the Ways and Means Committee, a committee that has jurisdiction over welfare, foster care, Social Security, things that I care very deeply about. That is where I am headed in the next term.
What has President Trump's policies meant for your constituents in your Milwaukee congressional district?
Well, I can tell you that my constituents are in a transitional period because of sort of the deindustrialization of Wisconsin, and the loss of lots of jobs up north in shipbuilding and other kinds of industries. And I think to the extent that Wisconsin went red in 2016, to some extent is a reflection of that frustration. But right now, with the trade wars that we're hearing about, the only thing I can hear, Steve, is the harm this will do to cranberries, to cans. I think of Miller Brewery, Harley Davidson's, which is headquartered in my district, and I hear prices going up for my constituents, and their wages haven't gone up at all. We gave $1.5 trillion to the wealthiest people into corporations, and 60% of that money has gone into corporate buybacks. Only about 15% of it has gone into increasing the wages of anyone. So my constituents have found that we're decimating the social safety net. We haven't put any money into infrastructure, something that they would be really good at, like the new train that we just have brought on board. And they're caught between a rock and a hard place. No money's put out there that will truly create new, innovative economic development. And then on the other hand, have the social safety net decimated. The cuts that are being proposed in the Farm Bill and in the food stamps, the Social Services Block Grant, Community Development Block Grant Fund, all of these things will be a real hardship for my constituents if this presidency does not have some checks and balances.
Governor Walker, his aides, and even Democratic Representative Jason Fields have said they believe there's some opportunity for your constituents to work at Foxconn. Could I get your response to their statement?
Everybody wants to support business when it's practical. My concern about Foxconn is that we have socialized the costs and privatized the profits. This is just an obscene amount of concessions that we're making for a private company. And the benefit has yet to be seen. So I'm very, very concerned about that. Every deal you have with business, you want to create opportunities for your constituents, but you don't want the tax burden to be greater than the benefit.
If nothing is really of substance is getting passed in Washington now, when Republicans control both branches of government, and if your party takes control of the House, how does anything get passed under that scenario?
Well, I can tell you, President Trump is a day trader. And it is not unclear to me that he has said it in the past that he won't negotiate with whatever new majority is there. The Democrats have an agenda. I mean, we want to increase the minimum wage. We want an infrastructure bill, just like the president does want. We want to protect our environment. We have an agenda. And many people have made the observation that Donald Trump was a long-time Democrat before he took advantage of the Republican Party in order to become president. Prison reform would help a great deal. I mean, Wisconsin, we have the highest incarceration rate among African American men, arguably in the world. And so that would go a long way toward normalizing the lives of our families here to have some prison reform. I think there are things we can do with President Trump. But as long as we have a Republican Party who feels that they're going to exploit this mercurial president and just have him say, we just want him to sign everything. We want him to sign the biggest deficit in history.
$21 trillion.
That's right. We want him to sign a big deficit bill so that we can pay off all of the wealthy folks. We want him to deregulate everything and destroy the environment. As long as there are no checks, it's not just a check on the presidency, it's a check on Republicans. And so, the idea of getting something done, it will get something done if we can stop some of the attrition of our democracy and our way of life in the next cycle.
Question on international affairs. The June 12th summit with the North Korean leader was on and off, and now as of today it's on again. Are you hopeful for something in terms of world peace might come of that?
Well, I can tell you that in my entire life, the volatility on the Korean Peninsula has been something that I have been looking at, and it would be wonderful if Donald Trump could solve this. But it doesn't seem to me that he's committed at all and to the details. I mean, this seems like a sideshow. Is for show and not for go. Because if it were for go, even at these latest meetings, you would have seen more informed staff, brokers, and agencies in the room, other than just the new State Department director. He would have had other people in the meeting that we saw occurred today. So that tells me that the work that has to be done in advance of such talks has not been done, and that is concerning to me.
I want to ask you about DACA. Is it a step forward, the discharge petition that only needs 4 more Republican signatures?
I can tell you, I know the Speaker is putting tremendous pressure on Republicans who feel inclined to sign the petition. And it's not that Paul Ryan disagrees with doing something about DACA, but he like I told him when he ran, he's on a fool's mission to sort of herd this Republican conference. And so I don't know if he'll be able to stop the flood, but as you know, I presided over another one of these coups, as it were, to get a bill out, and it's been done in this cycle, so it could be done.
Are you concerned that Senator Baldwin may lose on November 6th? She'll be up against either Senator Vukmir or Kevin Nicholson?
I am not concerned that she's going to lose, because we're going to work our tails off. We're going to work our tails off, and we're not going to, Senator Johnson was regarded as the #1 target in the United States, and everybody was so sure that he was going to lose. So the corollary of that is not to be so sure that Tammy will prevail, that we don't work as hard as we possibly can, and that we don't sort of force all of the assets from all over the United States to come in to defend her. We're going to defend this seat vigorously. Tammy Baldwin has been a marvel for all of Wisconsin. She's not neglected the urban areas, been concerned about our manufacturing footprint. She's cared deeply about our veterans, reached across the aisle for solutions to that. She cares so much about our rural areas and our farmers. I'll never forget that her Christmas card had cows on it. She cares so much about the opioid crisis, about health care, and she's a very hardworking, conscious, woke senator, and we have to work as hard as we can to get her reelected.
What should be the next national steps to fight the opioid and heroin and methamphetamine scourge and addiction that you just talked about?
Well, I am very happy to see that people are treating it like an illness instead of a crime, unlike the crack cocaine epidemic that we saw in the very failed war on drugs. I hope that the problem is that these are just empty words. We have not seen the commitment to putting the monies and the resources and the systems in place to actually deal with this crisis. The notion that we're just going to stop prescribing people drugs is not enough. There are people who actually need these drugs. I mean, so just the idea we're going to stop prescribing and that's going to be the answer, I don't think that will be the answer. We have got to have a systemic approach to it, and we have to put some dollars behind it.
10 Democrats or more are running for governor. Is that a healthy situation, Congresswoman?
It is only going to be healthy if we can all come together on August 15th, the day after the primary. And that is my commitment, and that is the conversation that I'm having with people, is that the generic ballot shows that Scott Walker is very vulnerable up against any Democrat because he's tried to destroy the Wisconsin idea. He's tried to bring down our stellar educational system. You know, he put us immediately a couple of $100 million in debt by not taking the Medicaid expansion. He ran Talgo out of here with $800 million that we could have used to upgrade our infrastructure. You know, he's harmed our elders. He's shut down clinics, Planned Parenthood, anyone. No wonder there are 10 people running. Everybody sees that he has been a total failure as a governor. And so our challenge is going to be to make sure that we don't have a polarized primary election, and that, when I wake up, as soon as they announce the nominee, all of us get to work for that nominee, whoever that is.
Whoever that nominee is, should she or he lash Governor Walker to President Trump? Should that be a big part of his or her campaign?
Well, I think that standing and fighting the issues is sufficient. It's hard to resist recounting all of the antics of Donald Trump. But quite frankly, he's such a clown that you just can't remember. It'd be different if he did that, 2 or 3 awful things and you could just sort of, run those off. But who can remember all those things? I think that it's a sufficient campaign to talk about how Scott Walker himself has failed. And they don't even have to mention Donald Trump. Donald Trump has never had a legislative idea at all. All of his ideas have come from Paul Ryan and others who want to destroy the safety net, destroy the environment. Scott Walker is the thought leader on harming poor people, destroying our education system, destroying our environment, taking collective bargaining away from people, denying them their First Amendment rights to organize. No, any one or all of our candidates can take him, right on face to face.
Would you agree that we're a lot more divided as a nation politically than when you went off to Congress, the U.S. House? More divided?
Well, we were pretty divided then, but yes, we are divided. And I think that the divider-in-chief, Donald Trump, has poured fire. I mean, I'm trying to think of who he hasn't denigrated. I mean, he went after women right away, grabbing their private parts. He went after Mexicans. He went after Muslims, black people, Indians, disabled people, war heroes. Who am I missing? I mean, I don't think I'm missing too many people. And so nobody owes him any loyalty.
Do you hold out hope that we can become less divided in the next 2, 6, 8 years? Or is this division going to get broader and more angry?
Well, one of the things that I think is really, really important is that I think it's important for us to have a cultural evolution where we come to a point where we appreciate each other. One of the things that I think is so beautiful about Milwaukee is our Summerfest galas, where everyone gets to showcase their culture, and you get to appreciate it, rather than to fear it or be suspicious of it. You get to break through some of your prejudices. I remember when I first ran for Congress, I went to Polish Fest.
Polish Fest.
And they were all standing in a circle, dancing. And so I saw this crinkled old man, and I thought, well, gee, I'm so exhausted. I'll just pick him because he's old and he can't do anything. And I picked him up, and he started to do the polka.
Polka?
And he was dragging me around like a limp rag. But I learned to polka, and I learned also not to judge a book by its cover. He was an old man, but he knew how to polka, And I think, and that is what I think, that I am a very well-rounded, comfortable in my skin person, because I have dipped my big toe into other people's cultures. I will go to a mosque. I will go to a synagogue. I will explore. I will eat your food that I have never tried, unless it's just too gross, but I will eat your food. I will wear your clothing. And I think that's what's important. Culture, art. We have to stop defunding these kinds of things, because that is the bridge. Music, art. This is the things that bring people together.
Last question, I promise. Me Too movement translate into Year of the Woman on November 6th for female candidates?
Oh, we've got so many women running. I am so delighted. We will never right the world until we put women into positions of power anywhere in the world. One of the things that I learned when I was the co-chair of the bipartisan women's caucus, congressional caucus, is that women in the world, they all experience the same trauma and the same things. And misogyny affects them and their children in the same way. Would we still be, every new presidency, women's right to choose to terminate a pregnancy or to even have birth control is on the docket. And it's because they can do it. And I know Republican women who've stood up to the guys in Congress, and they were primaried the following year. And this is so important to women's health. There's nothing more fundamental to the health of women than reproductive freedom. Can you imagine, Steve? I'm asking you. Can you imagine having a fertile period from, say, age 11 to maybe age 55, where in any given month you could become pregnant? And you could become pregnant not because you're some loose person. You could get raped, which happens to a lot of women, inside and outside of marriage. No birth control, no ability to control your body. Who can afford physically, mentally, emotionally, financially to have 10, 11 kids? No one.
So the Me Too movement, long overdue.
Me Too. I say it's the Me Too movement is so long overdue, and I am so delighted that it has finally come to age.
Congresswoman Gwen Moore, thanks so much for talking to WisconsinEye.
Thank you so great.
Have a
to
good
see
convention.
You, Steve.
Have a great convention.